I'm J.R. McNair, and I have been in business for 23 years. And it has been a great journey, but it's been an interesting journey. I've learned a lot. I've seen a lot. Most people that know me know I'm a pretty positive person. I look at the future as being good. I do believe, as Peter Thiel says, that in his book 0 to 1, how, you have an optimistic person that believes that the future will be good without them having to do anything, and that the future is just going to magically be good. And then you have a group of people that believe that the future will be good, but they have to do something in order for that future to be good. Then you have a set of people that believe that the future will be bad, okay? And because of that, we have to make sure that we're planning and being prepared. So they're pessimistic of the future, but they believe they need to plan for that. Then there's others that believe that the future will be bad, but it's nothing that they can do, so they might as well have a good time. That's one of my favorite books. I think Peter Thiel is a great mind. When he was talking about the people that believe that the future would be great, but they didn't really have to do anything and it was just going to be great. He was kind of saying that that's how the United States is. Like right now, or at least over the past few years, they believe that the future would be great. I don't know if everybody's sentiment is that way now, considering that, the changes that have happened over the last few years. But in recent years, it has been the case that the United States believes that the future will be great, and they're very optimistic of the future, but they believe that regardless of whatever happens, it's still going to be a great future. And those are typically not the best ways to think, that regardless of what you do, that things are just going to be peachy and great. That's kind of just very foolish, I would say. When America really got its dominance and greatness, there was a group of people that said, hey, yeah, we do believe that America's going to be great. They saw the future of what America is now, or what America was, and said, that's what we see. But we know that if we're going to have that for our kids, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, there's something that we have to do now. So those individuals ended up working to ensure that the future of America was great. And those are those two cases. So if we look at the group of people that believe that the future is going to be bad, pessimistic, we have to plan for it. The countries is probably one of the greatest planners maybe ever in the history of the world is probably China. And so China is very pessimistic about the future. They believe that the future is going to be bad. Things are going to be horrible, but they're planning for that. So China's been out a whole heck of a lot longer than the United States has. And so they say, hey, listen, we've been here for thousands of years, and we know that in the future, things are going to be bad, but we're going to plan for it to make sure that we're at least not bad, but they do see the future as being bleak. And then you have other groups, at least, Peter ends up talking about this in 0 to 1, how there's a group of people that believe, yeah, the future is going to be bad, but we can't do anything about it. So let's party. You know what I'm saying? So that's what happens in Europe. I used to play football in Europe, and I love Europe. So I love Europe. I love Germany. We went all over, from Germany, Austria, all over. I got engaged to my wife at the top of the Eiffel Tower in Paris. And I did it before Tom Cruise. But I love Europe. It was refreshing when I was there, to where life wasn't so serious. Took like these 2-hour lunch breaks, took a lot of vacation or holiday, as they would call it. And so when I came back to the States, it was like everybody was moving so fast. And I was like, oh man, it took me a little bit of time just to really kind of get back in the American movement of things. Because of that, Europe has a lot of problems all unto itself. Really, the fact that I think the biggest problem that nobody's talking about in Europe, maybe they are now, is the fact that Europe doesn't have enough young people and they're not having enough babies. And so, so people say, why is that a problem? it's a big problem. Actually, Elon Musk thinks that's the biggest problem that we face in most countries throughout the world, is that there's just not enough people being born. And so there's a group of people that say that, hey, there's too many people being born, and there's too many people that exist on the earth to deplete resources. I'm to the point to believe the opposite. Hey, I have 7 kids. So, you look at me and you look at guys like Elon Musk, and the world has to look and study Europe because I believe it's so fascinating. Of course, they've been in existence much longer than we have in the United States. Of course, the foundation of the United States came out of Europe. So when you look at that, you say, okay, they're kind of like really like hundreds, if not thousands, or 1,000 or so years ahead of the cycle of things, even though they weren't a republic or don't have the same democracy and in the way that we have here in the United States. You can still see that some of maybe the mindset of people when they are in developed countries, like where they go and like the cycle of how that happens over a period of time. If you look at it first, I think people are coming and they're trying to survive, to live. And then I think what ends up happening, they try to industrialize or modernize their living to make it somewhat specialized, things like this. But you still had a more of home environments, things like this. And then maybe they then went to a development phase where they were like, hey, we're going to focus on just everybody working, And then they said, well, hey, we're not going to really focus as much on the family. And then they get to a point to where it's like a whole generation or two passes, and then you have no young people in a country. And so it's kind of horrible when you look back, because now they don't have anybody to work in any of the stores that they have. They don't have anybody to build any of the stuff that they need built. They don't have any. So what they end up having to do, they have to end up importing talent and a workforce from other countries. So now you'll see a lot of Africans in Europe. You'll see Asians in Europe, all these different cultures of individuals and countries that are coming. Because once again, it's not like, it takes about 18, 19 years for a baby to get to the point to where they can pretty much be beneficial in society. So it's not like you can say, hey, let's start making some babies now. And I mean, you look in Europe and you look at that and you say, right now, I mean, if somebody, let's just say if a woman is on maternity, I mean, I think when I checked last, it was like a year or maybe even 2 years. They were paying her while she was on leave for maternity. So why would they do that? Because they're like, we need babies. So, and so this is how you know that it's so important. And so when we look back at these things, and this is the thing, I'm to each his own. I never, I don't think anybody should have kids unless that's the thing that they want to do. Now, kids coming into the world, I believe that that's a beautiful thing. And on that end, and what I'm saying is I'm not telling people to force themselves into having kids. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I am saying is that, this is something that is a problem. The world, like you have to, I think it's like you have to have 2.1 kids per person or per household in order for a population size to stay the same. So let's just say you have a population in your nation of 1 million people, okay? And you want to just keep it at 1 million people, right? You have to have I think it's like 2.1 kids or 2.2 kids just to keep the population size at 1 million people, okay? So anything less than that, then what happens to your population? It starts to decrease in size. So you'll start looking and you'll see like, man, now all of a sudden the population of this country was 1 million. Now it's 950,000. Now it's 850,000. Now it's this, and then you have to look at the data. Like I'm a data guy. I don't make decisions based on just, blind dogma. Now, there are certain things, certain values that I believe that are true to me and that I hold true to me, that are so true to my core. But when I make decisions from a very data-driven perspective. So when I look at stuff, I say, let's look at the data. Like, what is the data telling us, okay? And let me tell you, too, it's another thing about data. Data can be presented in ways that could be in the for or the negative, just depending on how you view the same data. When you look at things, you have to look at stuff from a truly objective standpoint. So, for example, on the news, you could have the same news people watch a debate, okay? Somebody could say something totally in the negative, and then somebody else can say something totally in a positive, and it's the same content being produced. So that's when you know that that is more subjective in nature. When somebody's giving their opinion on stuff, that is more subjectivity. What I'm looking at, and what you should look at, and what all of us should look at, is objective nature of truth. When we're looking at the objectivity of things, we can say, okay, this is true without any other influence. For example, I go outside, I come in, I say, man, whoo, it sure is hot out there, man. It's like 100 degrees outside. And you can say, I don't believe it's 100 degrees outside. Well, you know, regardless of whatever you believe, the truth is you can go out with a thermometer and or a thermostat or whatever and see that it is 100 degrees. That is the truth, okay? And these are things that can supersede the subjective nature of what we believe or what we think. And so I'm bringing all of this up just to lay out something that we have to start, looking at and preparing ourselves for. There are going to be some serious changes that I really believe are going to impact us forever. You know, I was watching something. John Hope Bryant, he's right here in Atlanta, and I like him a lot because he's somebody that I've seen that is not so far here, so far there. He has a very practical mind. And somebody that he looks at the data. He was saying something about how what's going to happen in 5 years. The next 5 years is going to have the same amount of change that happened over the last 50 years. And to a degree, I believe he's correct there. But I believe he's way off when it comes to the amount of time. You know, and let me just back up a little bit. One thing you got to understand, I've always been a very positive person, and, I'm very, once again, optimistic in my viewpoint of the future, right? There's going to be a ton of opportunity that's going to be present, and I never want to be a person for doom and gloom. But I'm telling you, some things are coming. They're coming, and they're coming really fast. And you got to be ready for this. It took me a minute even to just do this. Like, I'm out here working, and my wife and I, we have 7 kids and run, 2 successful businesses, a nonprofit organization. I sit on all these boards, and I don't really have a lot of time to do this. And really, to be honest, I didn't really care about doing this. Because I knew what I knew. And we have a big community, our small business nation, where we inform a lot of our small businesses. We have hundreds of thousands of people in our small business community, small business nation, across the country and in the world. But, so this was not something that I was even like, oh, you know what, I got to get on social media and inform people on this. But this was something that it was like digging at my heart. And it was like, I had to say, man, I have to say something. I have to speak. I have to make sure that people understand and know what's coming so that they're not caught off guard by these things, right? That they're ready for what's about to happen, what's already happening, guys. Listen, it is crazy. Like, I was just talking to people before we even got on, and I was like, man, look, you got to look at what's happening right now. Like, let's just say I'm in a pond or in a big lake. The boulder has been dropped, okay? It's already been dropped. The stuff that's happened has already happened. What's happening, though, is that you can't tell that it's already happened because the ripple effect of the things have not hit you yet. But it's already happening, guys. Things are moving so fast. And so getting back what I was saying with John Hope, he was talking about the next 5 years. No, that's going to happen over the next 12 months. And really, a lot of that change is going to happen over the next 6 to 7 months. So right now, it is, we're in May, the middle of May. 2025. And so what I would say is even before the end of this year, we're going to see a lot of changes going to happen. And God has just really placed it on my heart just to tell the people to prepare themselves and be ready. There's going to be a lot of opportunities going to be made, a lot of opportunities, right? But then there's going to be a lot of people that are caught off guard and don't know, and I don't know it all. Understand this. And I'm not proclaiming to know it all. And I'm not saying I'm some, prophet or anything like that. What I have seen is this, though. I've been right a lot. So I don't try to make myself any bigger than I am. But I remember, and my wife can tell you, this was back in 2007, 2006. And the market was so great. We had our location not too far from where we are in South Atlanta, and things are going great. I mean, man, we were like helping people like raise like $1 million a month. I mean, it was so easy to get funding. It was so easy just for anything to happen. And the real estate market was booming. I had so many people in the real estate market that was making money. And I was like, oh man, they were making money like hand over foot. I mean, you could make a mistake in real estate and I made $1 million on accident. And it was just like, what? Something was inside of me that felt like, something's about to happen. I didn't know exactly the date when it was going to happen. My estimations, I said, man, over the next 3-4 years, like, something's going to happen. And I started talking to my clients, like any of my clients that, you can ask them, JR, he warned us about some things that was about to happen. And it was just a feeling that I had. It wasn't like it was like somebody said, JR, this is going to happen. All right, that wasn't what it is. It was just like, and I was kind of blind too, to an extent, because, I had a feeling, but it's kind of like when you have feelings, but you kind of ignore those feelings, or it's kind of like you being in a relationship. You're in a relationship with a girl and, you kind of feeling something is off, but you kind of ignored it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, something's off, something's wrong, but you kind of like, because you see the good things and you're like, I'm just going to ignore that, because all of the good things are happening. And this is kind of similar thing. It was so many good things that was happening back then that it was easy to ignore feelings that you knew were gonna happen in the future, if that makes sense. And I started talking to all my clients back then. I said, hey man, listen, I think you need to diversify and just, start putting your money in some other areas here. Oh man, JR, man, we good. I talked to a lot of people in the real estate field. Some of them listen, but not a lot of them listen. I knew that something was happening because it was so easy to make money. I mean, think about it, no doc loans where you could go to a bank, a traditional bank, okay, with a credit score above like a 660 back then, and say, yeah, I made $100,000, $200,000, and they just say, here you go, here's a $200,000, go make it happen. And it was stuff like that, man. I mean, or in a real estate market, it was like, oh yeah, you know what? You can get this huge house and you only got to pay $500 a month or $1,000 a month. But a lot of even those things were set up for commercial use, what traditionally commercial investors would utilize, because they were smart enough to know how to utilize those types of loans. But to make a long story short, anybody who lived through that, and for a lot of the younger people that are out there, if you guys were even born during that time, it was just a different time. But you knew that things were good. I mean, things were great, as a matter of fact. And but I just had this feeling like something's gonna happen. And so you got to realize, at this point, I had just opened up my first location, probably 2 or 3 years before then, and then, I just incorporated my business 5-6 years before then. So in 2002. So, and I incorporated as a real estate development company. It wasn't doing what we do now really primarily, which is helping businesses and things of that nature, even though we still do a lot of stuff in real estate, but it's not our primary thing. So it's not like I was in business for a very long time. I just, I've always, I started my first business when I was 10. I bought my first piece of real estate when I was 14. I've been studying real estate ever since I was 12. And it wasn't a house, it was a piece of land for anybody that wants to know that. But anyway, I've been in and around business really my whole life, not because my parents were these business people. No, I just knew that this was a way for me to make money in a way that I could make money without going on a job, without doing these things. And that's what really attracted me, to doing business, because I was like, man, I can go with a product or a service, something, and go to somebody and provide it for them and they can pay me for that. Like, man, like, this is awesome. Like, my first weekend as an entrepreneur, I made $200 cutting yards. So even though I had been around business and understood business, it's not like when I was consulting and actively consulting people that I was in business for like 20 years, but I felt something. And others that I knew, like my mentor, even before the market crashed going in 2008, they saw uncertainty in the future, but I think they were seeing stuff maybe about 6 months beforehand. I had really had a feeling on those things about 2-3 years ahead of time. Because I had asked one of my mentors for like $1 million, like back in like 2006, 2007. And during this time, guys, I just want to give y'all some little side note things. I always tell people, like, when you have somebody that's interested in investing in you and they had the capacity to invest in you, see, somebody may have $1 million. They may only have $1 million to live off of, so they can't invest $1 million in you. If you want somebody to give you $1 million, they probably need to have $50 million available to them, So I'm bringing this up. If you got somebody that has the capacity and that likes you, don't wait. I waited like 6 months and to really get everything back to them that they needed. And in that 6 months, I missed it. I missed the window. When I went back to him, he was like, hey, we were financing a lot of people at that time with internal financing. And so I was really like, for people who didn't maybe not have the credit, things like this, the market's getting ready to change. It's a new president getting ready to come into office. We don't know how that's going to work out with the helping to finance these particular people. And they say, we're going to wait. And they waited on that $1 million investment because he said, well, JR, can you take 250 starting now? I said, yeah, sure. And so, but I drug my feet some there, which ended up causing that investment not to go through. I'm bringing that up because it's all about timing. Timing is everything, guys. And if I would have got that back to him in 2 weeks, we would have got that money. Okay, which it totally changed our business. It changed the trajectory of everything. We had a lot of people at that time that owed us a lot of money. And hundreds of thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And, when the market crashed and all that stuff crashed, I had a decision to make, like I said, man, I could go after those people for the stuff that they owed. But I was like, man, well, I know they were struggling. And I'm not telling you guys to do this, but I really forgave all those people their debt. And we just kind of just said, you know what? Look, if these people can't afford to pay rent, how can they afford to pay us on some stuff they finance with us? And I just kind of marked it clean. But because of that and because of the investment that we didn't get, we had to change a lot of stuff. Couldn't no longer pay for a ton of our staff that we had. We started essentially as a real estate development company. Then somebody came to me and was like, hey, like after college, I was supposed to go in the NFL draft in like the 5th, 6th round. But that wouldn't work out. I went to a very small school, Wofford College. I got hurt my senior year, but a myriad of those things that, and my agent thought from his projections that I should have went that way, but that's not what the NFL thought. So with that being said, I had all these huge job offers. I was probably one of the top graduates probably in my college's history as far as being student government president, academic All-American, all these things on this end. But I turned down all of those jobs because I wanted to play football. And I had started this little company in college, and the NFL thing didn't work out there. I found myself really still training because I was training 4 or 5 hours a day. And I told my agent, I was like, look, man, I'm going to train. And he was, and I kept him on, got a new agent out of New York. But I was training 4 or 5 hours a day, waiting tables at Olive Garden. It was giving me enough money to where I could train, and people would come to me and say, hey, JR, can you help me with a corporation? I was like, yeah, my mom taught me how to incorporate businesses at 17. And somebody else came to me and said, JR, can you help me with a website? I said, yeah, I learned how to build websites in college, making some extra money because they didn't pay athletes the way that they get paid now, and that's a whole nother story. But and then somebody else came to me and said, JR, can you help me do a business plan? I said, yeah, I can figure it out. I went down to Staples, got business plan software, and started figuring that out there. And when the smoke cleared, I had a business. We were helping people with business services at first. Then people came to us and were like, hey, we need funding for our business, JR. Can you help us? I said, I don't do that. But after about 2 or 3 people asking, I was like, no, it was actually maybe about 7 or 8 people asking. I said, maybe we need to do some funding. And so we helped start in the primary lending market, helping them package together deals to get funding on that end. And so fast forward back to the place where I was speaking of, we were helping people get like $1 million a month in funding to one day in like almost like, I think it was like almost right at 2008 or whatever, or around that time, it was like everything just stopped. It was like we were helping people get $1 million a month to nothing, literally overnight. And so, I'm bringing that up to say that I've been here before, guys. Like, I've seen it, and it was a thing that I felt beforehand, and I saw it. And so what I'm talking to you about now, when I say that what I'm looking at in the future, some things are coming, and I just want you to be prepared for it. For you guys that don't know what happened after 2008, everything really crashed. We had the Great Recession, as they call it, and it was a period of about 7 to 10 years to where it was harder in the market. I don't think, from what I see in the future, that it's going to be that long of a period of time this go round, but I do think it's going to be much worse. I think that the time period is going to be shorter, but it's going to be much worse, the effect of it. And I believe that there's going to be some good times on the back end for people that position themselves well. Look, in a corporate world, they are always trying to be efficient. A lot of them are driven by the, capital markets are really what happens in the stock market and things like this. And, so there's some decisions that are made because of that. Things that are happening, that we need to correct as a country, as far as the debt situation is concerned. We got downgraded as a country as far as credit rating. Every country has a credit rating just like we have a credit score, right? Personally, every country has a credit score. And so they rank that country based on their ability to repay. So if you look at our country, we used to have A1 credit, okay? And over the years, because we've kind of not been as financially responsible as a country, what ends up happening is that if you are spending more than you make, you're gonna be in trouble if that just continues over a period of time, right? You can't live off of credit cards, right? Maybe it's a temporary fix, There's a lot of philosophy that people have when it calls a Keynesian philosophy of economics, where people believe that you have to focus on the now, because if you don't focus on the now, it won't be a tomorrow, right? But what that has caused a lot of times is a lot of poor decision making that now we're having the consequences of kind of reaping what's being sown, bad decisions that have been sown over decades and decades and decades and decades. This is not something that's happened like overnight. And for anybody to tell you that a few small people can understand and dictate what happens in an entire economy is crazy. There are so many complex things that happens inside of economy. It's so many different pieces. It's like hundreds of thousands or millions of pieces that make up an economy. So for somebody to think that, you can have a small group of people that can really make decisions for an entire economy, that's kind of foolery. That doesn't really even make sense, And I think that most people don't even understand what even is happening in an economy, what's even happening in our current economy. But what I will say is this, just to give you some context, the United States right now is in so much debt. And we got downgraded in Obama's turn, got downgraded in our credit rating. And even now, I think like the last company that kind of had us at a higher tier rating has now just downgraded us, I think, this past week. So what does that mean? They're saying that they don't believe as strongly in the United States' ability to repay their debt. And so, and we have a lot of debt. Some of that debt is owned by other countries like China. It's very interesting. I mean, our economies, the Chinese economy and the United States economy are connected in a lot of ways. You know, when I was a kid, people said things like, "Oh man, that thing is made in China." Aha. Like, it was funny when we were kids. Like, if somebody bought something from China, it was like it was crap, and it was a lot of times crap back then. But that was when I was a kid. Okay, they kept working on getting better and better and better and better. I always tell this to people. In anything that you do, to endure things while you suck, okay, you're going to be great at one point in time. And I tell this to people in sports, especially, you know, as a wrestler. My son wrestles, and it's probably one of the hardest sports in the world, I believe. And, you know, I always tell people, you know, like, when you go into wrestling, you're going to suck in the beginning. But will you be willing to continue long enough to where you don't suck? A lot of people give up because they feel like they're going to suck forever. You're not going to suck forever, especially if you stay at something. And this isn't anything in a sport, in business, whatever it is. Now, so China, they were not good at manufacturing stuff of quality. I grew up in the South. And, you know, I went to college in the Carolinas, and you go up there and you see all of these textile mills. One of my mentors, Mr. Milliken, before he passed, you know, they own the largest privately owned textile company in the world, in the Southeast, period. And across the country, but you'll see all of these closed textile mills and all these things like this. Took a lot of those old mills and liquidated the equipment and sold it across the world, and then turned the real estate into other useful cases for real estate, like apartments or business use or whatever the case was. And they found use of these old 2 million square foot facilities, 5 million square foot facilities that were just sitting in there being an eyesore. They made use of it, which was great use. You got places like Detroit where we have a big community. Shout out to Detroit. We got a big community up in Detroit, and you know, you look at those areas there and you see their industry left. Or if I look at places like down in Macon, where they used to have a huge tobacco company that was down there, and I mean, when it closed up, it literally devastated an entire area, because that's everything that was built in and around that. That was a ripple. It had affected that area, but it took 10, 12 years for people to feel the effects, or better yet, in some of those cases, it may have taken 3, 4, 5 years. This stuff that we're talking about right now, okay, AI, artificial intelligence, automation, all these other things that we're talking about, the debt, these things have sped up things tremendously. I have a lot of friends that are manufacturers. They had warehouses in China, they had warehouses in, you know, Ecuador and all these other different places, because of course now they pulled all their stuff from China with the tariff stuff. And, you know, just kind of really, you know, talking to them like, hey, I believe in manufacturing here in the United States, and I see that as something promising in the future, but it's not going to look like what it did. I see a lot of boutique manufacturing shops, not these huge, large manufacturing plants that we had before, but a lot of boutique manufacturing shops that could make very signature stuff, which I believe people, and this is what I see even in audiences want like things that are niche stuff. I mean, you can be a $1 billion company just selling strapless shoes. Or I saw a guy, he has a sock shoe. It's like a sock that you can run on, and you can step on, you know, glass and all this kind of other stuff, and it won't pierce it. All I'm saying is that those are industries now that where people can eventually make hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars in, that are niche. And what I see in the future, very efficient high production in terms of quality and in terms of units that they're doing in a very efficient way. And that's what I see happening in the future. And when I look at people like President Trump, they're looking at bringing a lot of the things back here. That's a great plan. I do believe we have to look at how this is going to happen. Can we give some kind of subsidies, incentives, things like that, tax breaks to small manufacturing companies to help them be able to get off the ground and give them some years to figure it out and or fail, right? So I'm bringing this up to say that I see in the future that yes, manufacturing is going to come back, but it's going to be totally different, and we have to be very wise about how we do it. I will say that I do believe that that's a very promising future for individuals. So if you're out here and you're looking for things that were going to be happening in the future, boutique manufacturing, I think that's a great area to focus in. Going back to what I was mentioning with China there, like for all these years, we just totally abandoned manufacturing. They got really good at it. You got to also understand too, when you manufacture stuff, there's byproducts to manufacturing anything. This gets back to my 3 essential things we have to, really the 4 essential things that I would say that we have to survive on this country and on this planet is food, water, shelter. And the 4th thing, which is something we don't think about a lot, which is air, okay, or oxygen. And those are things that I believe we need to protect and figure out how we can keep in a good standing. No, I don't believe any country should have to rely on another country to survive and live. That's crazy. And whoever was smart enough to think that that was going to be a long-term sustainable thing was crazy. Or maybe they weren't. Maybe it was a bigger plan that they had. All I'm saying is that it ain't working. No person should ever be relied upon another entity for their base survival. That's how we were for years. All of our tech companies sourced everything there. And China was very wise. Like I said, they were like, hey, you know what? We're going to allow you guys to come in here to do business with us, but we want you to train us, show us how to do this stuff, we need the technology. And then, they have billions and billions and billions of people. We have hundreds of millions of people here. They have billions of people. So, a lot of companies wanting to get into that market, things like that. And so what ended up happening over a period of time, we ended up developing their entire economy. This is why the stock market, that's why I'm not a huge fan of the stock market, because a lot of decisions that are made in the stock market are made for incremental gains or instant gratification. Sometimes the decision is like, hey, we're going to do this because this is going to give us, a greater profit margin for this quarter, okay? And our stock is going to go up and I'm going to get a raise. But then what ends up happening, you look back and now we've kind of almost like sold ourselves and sold the future of our country to China for a period of time. And when we realized what we did, it was almost too late. We're trying to self-correct things now, but most economists believe it's too late. Most great nations only last about 250 years. And a lot of people say we're on borrowed time. Now, I don't believe the United States is going to be some kind of third world country. That's not what I'm saying. Because you got to understand one thing. Our dollar is the dollar, the currency that really is like this backing. Everything runs off of that, just one particular currency. Everything derives around a lot of that. So if something happens to us, it's going to affect everybody. Okay, so this is why, we look at all of these countries, and some of these countries trying to act bad and things like this. And, but they know that if the United States fall, we all going to be hurt. The United States does have the most powerful military on the planet, but a lot of things that I would say that the United States has to look out for aren't things that I don't think people can go toe to toe with the United States and expect to win, but it's the other things, and which I'm not going to get into right now, but it's a lot of stuff ultimately may be the demise of what we know as the great nation that we have. But with that being said, I'm saying this, I don't believe that our country is going to fall into some turmoil over the 6 or 7 months. As far as like being no country, that's not what I'm saying. No, what I am saying is there's going to be some change that's going to happen. I believe that there will be more change than we've ever seen in human history. in a particular period of time. It just brings me, side note, the most valuable skill set that you can have in any setting, I don't care what you're doing, is the ability to adaptability. That is probably the biggest skill set that you can have. And so a lot of people do not know how to adapt. They frozen by change. But the one thing you can know, the most constant thing in the world is change. Okay? You know that as long as you live, there's going to be change. You need to have the ability to adapt, problem solve, be able to change when the market changes, when things changes. I'll get on that, and I may do a whole thing just on how to build adaptability, just like the crocodile. Y'all know that, the crocodile has been around for ever. Since the dinosaurs, really. They have been able to adapt. I think even at one point in time, they became vegetarian. Anatomy kind of changed in that time. They were able to adapt. Like a lot of crocodiles can live in salt water, fresh water, can eat almost anything from fish to deer to birds, whatever. I mean, they can even bring their body temperature below freezing to where they could be essentially frozen. They can unthaw and keep living. I mean, these are the most adaptable creatures. It's crazy. And that's how really we have to be, right? And so these are not like roaches or something. These are roaches exist between anything. Yeah, but they're at the bottom of the food chain. We're talking about apex predators that have essentially existed since the dawn of time. So with that, as all of these things are happening, we're going through these transformations and we're looking at now, these things kind of converging at the same time. We have a master negotiator in President Trump, and I believe that he will be able to get a deal done there. What I do think, though, the damage has already been done. Look, we got to make sure we take care of us and ours, But I believe that, people are like, hey, if anything ever happens like this in the future, we need to be ready. I believe that, people, the dependency on another country, now they understand we can't have that in the future. People are looking at how do we build, like I was just talking to the one manufacturer, and I was just telling them, I said, look, what would it take for us to build a warehouse here in the Southeast? It's going to take this, and this. And so we're trying to look at ways to help them raise some money to go out and build stuff here in the States, right? And things need to make sense. Can you say, oh, just want to be American from that? That's, it has to make financial sense, right? Everything anybody does has to make financial sense. If at one point in time, I'm getting my chips from another country, things that are going into weapons on how we can defend ourselves from another country, all of this technology we're getting from somewhere else, and then something happens to where we have to defend ourselves, and you trying to fight with a gun, and you trying to ask the person that you pointing the gun to give you a gun. Like, that's crazy to me, like, so crazy. Like, hey, give me a gun so I can point it at you, So that's crazy to me. So I'm bringing this up to say that we have to figure out a way to get back to where we're self-sustaining as a country. And that's what's happened there. And getting on the debt thing, and this is something we got to look at. Like, we're in so much debt. They said that every 100 days, just on the interest, it's like we go into another $1 trillion worth of debt. $1 trillion, guys. Do you know how much $1 trillion is? Like, think about it. 100 billion is a lot of money. But $1 trillion? Like, think about that, man. That's crazy. That's a lot of money. And so, and there is not even $1 trillion company. Just think about that. Think about that. There's not one company right now. There's some that they say have valuations of $1 trillion, maybe Apple or Walmart. So by every year we're adding an extra $3 trillion, about $3.5 trillion to the national deficit every year. So let's look at that now, which is crazy. So I look at this and I say, okay, does anybody have a plan for us to get out of that type of debt? I think Doge, they have maybe saved $1 trillion through the cuts. We're giving ourselves an extra 100 days, baby. What will happen? I don't know. So I'm not telling you that I have idea of what will happen. I'm not sure. I haven't even looked into that. And this is not what this is for. I'm just trying to explain this to you so that you understand what is going on. We are looking at an aging population, right, where, Social Security, people retiring, people pulling from any monies that the government did have. I think the baby boomers are like the largest generation maybe to ever retire and really maybe like have this much money that they're going to pull from the government from, right? And I really hope that Social Security and all these things can pay out for even them, let alone the next generation after that. And so, because it's just, if already that debt is there, and then they're retiring, okay, and they're banking on a lot of them Social Security help to take care of them. Maybe, hopefully, it'll at least take care of them. And what I'm hoping is that by that time, we the people will have understood how to properly set up maybe an additional system to help to cover the elderly and individuals when they retire. So when you look at that, you look at the fact now that all of that's happening, and then you look at the fact that most of the United States was founded on the premise that that in order for it to succeed, you had to have an educated populace. And what does that mean? That doesn't mean that college educated. That's not what they were talking about. They were just saying that people needed to understand what the heck's going on. And I think now more than ever, I think we have a populace that does not fully understand what's even happening around them. And, I have a philosophy when it comes to economics that's more of a Austrian or Prussian type of philosophy. They talk about really educating the masses on economics. And that's why if you've seen my event, Small Business Day, it's the nation's largest startup launch event. And we one of the largest event producers in the world for in-person and or virtual events. And what we do is mainly just teach people and for them to understand economics, what's going on, not and specifically with entrepreneurship, but it's just really trying to educate them on how to produce money and how this thing kind of all works together. Now, what I'm talking about here, this is things that are more on some of this is on a micro level, but more on a macro level, and really kind of, explaining really how all of these pieces kind of fit together. But, what I see is that nowadays in society, we have most of the people that don't fully understand what's happening. So they're, even in their voting decisions, they don't really understand really what they're voting for. They don't, and it's harder for them to even understand what they're voting for because when you look at even the way that news is portrayed, it's very biased. It's not like they're not looking at something from an objective truth a lot of times. They're looking at things from very subjective angles. So when it's like simple, like if you say, hey, somebody came and did X, well, they'll say, well, actually, this person did da 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 da. No, let's just talk about the X happening, whatever that was, and not our opinion on what happened. And this is what we see a lot of times in the news. And so, I'm bringing all this up to say that you have on one end a populace of people who don't fully understand what's going on, and then you have the media who are supposed to be reporting on facts, okay, that are more so reporting on feelings, I would say. And so, and you have all of this thing that's culminating, and all of that's happening now where colleges now don't really have hardly the relevance that they did even 5 years ago, let alone 10, 20 years ago. Degrees don't really mean hardly anything anymore. And so you have a system that we said, you do good in school, you go to college, and then you'll get a job. Well, the first part happens for you to get into college, but just because you went to college does not guarantee a job. And so you could have went in, did great in college, and never have gotten a job, maybe because of your major, maybe because of the need what's in the marketplace. And a lot of jobs now say they don't require you to have a college degree. You look at somebody, Elon Musk and all these other companies, they say, look, I don't care if you went to college, it just shows that you can do your chores. But yet and still, you have a lot of kids that are going into college, going into trillions of dollars. I mean, as far as a nation in debt. And so that carries around with them. You can't even get rid of school loan debt in a bankruptcy, which is crazy to me, you know. And so you look at all of that and you say, okay, what and how did all of this happen? And that's a whole thing unto itself. But now that we're here and we're seeing all these pieces, we have to say this, okay, what does the actual education do? Okay, what does that mean? Okay, because I don't care about a degree, I care about skills. Let me give you my hierarchy of value here. What I believe is that the number one most important thing that somebody can have if I'm looking to hire them, and I'm giving you guys, once again, you know, my wife always, she tells me, she said, JR, make sure you're, giving people hope too in the midst of you telling them the truth. And I've always been a big person on honesty and telling people the truth. I believe there's so many people that are here today that don't tell people the truth. And I believe the most human thing you can do to anybody is tell them the truth. And so it's a lot of people that to not hurt people's feelings, to feel like maybe they can manipulate or potentially take advantage of somebody. They don't tell them the truth. And so, and that is not something that is the case with me. I'm going to tell people the truth, even if sometimes it doesn't feel so good. So, you know, she always says to make sure that, you know, you give them some hope too. And this is what I'm doing in here. I'm giving you guys some bits and pieces of information for you to understand fully, like, so you can see different pieces here and you make the decision on what you want to do. So if I was to say, just once again, what are the values that I look for as an employer? Okay. The values that I look for as an employer, number one is experience. Okay. Experience trumps everything else. Okay. You know, so if you have experience, like, that's very valuable to myself, and it's very valuable to employers that exist in the marketplace now, right? Experience is the number one thing that that at least we look for. The number two thing that I look for are skills. Okay, so because you can have skills without having experience. Okay, and so the first thing I look for, can I find somebody that has experience? Okay. And then if I can't find somebody, and particularly somebody that can fit within what we're doing and rolling, I say, okay, can I find somebody that may not have the experience but have the skills? Okay. And then then going down that hierarchy of needs for me as an organization, I then will go down and say, the third thing that I would look for outside of skills, things that they can actually do. That's why I always tell people, they say, oh, I graduated from Harvard, I did this and that. I'm like, okay, show that you're smart, but what can you do? You know, and those are the things, those are skills come in. Then the next phase down from that is, okay, specialized knowledge, okay, certifications, specific knowledge, specific knowledge or learnings that you have focused on to get. Those are the things, because I know that, hey, you understand this thing, even though it may be in this specific niche, you understand this thing, maybe not in its entirety, but you at least understand it enough to be proficient in it, okay? Now, the next thing that I look for under that is general knowledge. Okay, now that is where you typically would find most colleges that fall in. They fall in the general knowledge category there, right? And so, but then too, I'm gonna tell you something that kind of trumps all of that. If I see somebody that has high integrity and want and drive, that could kind of trump all of that stuff, because I'm like, hey, they have high integrity, I can trust them, and they have a drive or a desire to want to be better, right? Those things, and they're problem solvers, and they can think through stuff, and I don't have to tell them everything to do, but they can initiate with their brilliance that they have within them. Those things to me trump all of those other things. But I'm just giving these things to you so that you understand this is how things are looking in the market and typically how most employers will look at things. So if you're talking about people going out of school with these degrees and that I wouldn't say they're useless, but they have less value than they did, a lot less value than they did. And if you could take, somebody going to school versus somebody that's worked in a workforce, no debt, they come out, they have these years of experience. Once again, these things those things would be valued much more important. There is an in between though that's probably even greater than school or the experience because it merges both, and most people don't even know what that is. I'm gonna drop something on you right here. There is a mix between having the best of both worlds, the best of college really, and the best of the experience world, okay, but having a little bit of two, okay, because in order to go into this area, you have to have a little bit of two, which is the apprenticeship, okay? So apprenticeships are not internships, those are different. Apprenticeships are when you have a skilled person in a particular field. Let's just say it's a hairdresser, okay? Do you know you don't have to go to cosmetology school to become a hairdresser? No, you can study under a licensed cosmetologist, and then you can learn under them. And for a period of time with the hours, they will give you that apprenticeship, and that actually is even stronger than the degree because it shows that you have done the actual work. Okay, and there's several other fields like this, from plumbing to, all of the sort. And there's so many other ones that will, in a U.S. apprenticeship, will allow you, it kind of follows you like a degree. So you can go to various places you can go to various places and have that apprenticeship, and that apprenticeship will go wherever you need it to go, and without having to have a physical degree. And this is the most phenomenal thing. And not only that, but when you're doing an apprenticeship, you can be paid while you're doing an apprenticeship, okay, no debt. And then when you come out, like I said, it's just so much more valuable. But most people don't even know about that. We need to get back to apprenticeships, right? The closest best thing to an apprenticeship is an internship. It gives allows for people to have experience without actually having to really for people to give them an opportunity in that way. So I'm bringing all these things up for you to know and understand that this is what we're dealing with. So you have people that are now in school. A lot of them are being trained on things that are not relevant to the market place, and that's getting me to the point that I'm going to be making here. You have people that are being trained on subject matter that was maybe relevant 10, 20 years ago. Even think about it. People, why would you ever go to school to learn about marketing? Okay, I think that's a silly thing to learn about in school. Why? You say that, JR? Well, because marketing changes so fast. Okay, marketing changes every 2 to 3 months. What's relevant in the marketing? Now you can learn the macro, the overall arching ideas behind it, which are relevant, the theory, but what actually works, you're going to have to be in the market to understand those things. So if I'm writing a textbook on marketing in 2025, man, I'm gonna have to rip that textbook up every month, because every month is changing. You're looking at, and by the time I wrote the textbook, by the time I have then published the textbook and put it in an actual school, I have to then, once it's published, reps have to then go and sell it to the schools for them to say, yeah, we want to do that, but we're going to implement it that a year or two from now. So now you have this text that was produced 4 or 5 years ago that they're using in the school system to teach people about marketing when the marketing changes every month or two. You understand? So what I'm saying is you then have people that have these degrees, but what do the degrees really mean? Then when they get out into the marketplace is seeing that we need this. Colleges at one point in time were created to produce people to go in the marketplace and fulfill what needed to be fulfilled. Now, I don't know what's happened to this from this point. Some way along the way, colleges have lost their way to really fully preparing students for the current marketplace and for employers and really and to help fulfill the jobs that are being set forth. So then you have these entire swaths of people that have this education that's not relevant in a marketplace. And so now what you're looking at, you're sending your kid off, they're coming out and they're getting out of school and they know something. But once again, every person that I've hired in business, I've had to train them for like a year for them to fully even understand. And they were business majors. And it's just like, so what did you learn? It wasn't that they didn't learn anything. And in a way, the structure of a lot of schools are set up. There is set up to store things in your short-term memory bank so that you could pass a test, but it's not really applicable in the real world. And so you're looking at all of these things. It's crazy where now you have people that are going into the workforce and they're not skilled. They don't know what they're doing, but yet and still they want a job feeling that they're entitled to get a job because they got a degree. No, that's never been the case. You should go into a place, okay, and offer them value. You're only as good as the value that you're offering, okay? And so this is why it's so important to make sure that we are training and retraining, training our young people to make sure that they're going into areas equipped to be able to provide value to the marketplace and to employers in the marketplace. And in addition, retraining a lot of our workforce, okay? Which gets me back to the ultimate thing that I was going to talk to you about. And I had to set all that up for you to get to this place, what's coming. And I'm telling you all these things, and I haven't even touched on a lot of these other pieces, which for right now, I may make another video on some of the things that I haven't talked about, but getting you here now where we are to understand what's happening and what's coming. You know, since the beginning of man, you can understand this is a hammer, right? And this is a tool, okay, that man has used over years to build things, to destroy things, to do whatever needed to be done, to take things apart, to build things together, right? Technology, right? This is what sets really apart humans from the ape, okay? Is the fact that we can build things and utilize technology. Technology. This is the thing that has forever progressed humans through time, has been technology, the things that we've built, the tools that we've built. And so we've utilized this technology to build civilizations and utilize technology to destroy civilizations. And now we're here. From this to this technology here that we have on an iPhone, and you know, these are all technologies that we have built to help humanity over a period of time develop and grow. And I believe that, you know, from the industrial age to what I consider the information age, to the energy age, to what I consider now the age of the you know, AI and the metaverse and all these other things that we're in. And there is an age that I believe will end all ages, which is, I believe, the food and water age, you know, because is you know, as I mentioned, it's only I know we think all these things are important, but you know, if you don't have food, water, shelter, you can't survive on this planet. You know, you can survive on this planet without energy. We can get on horseback and, you know, camel and, you know, whatever. But, you know, even if we didn't have any lights, we could still survive, you know, not in the same way, of course, but, you know, but you can't survive without food and water. And these are things that food, water, shelter, and these are things that I believe that ultimately will be the end all of things, you know, when we get to that age. But where we are now, I see that the technology that we've built is going to totally transform everything. And I believe in the short term, it's going to be very interesting. In the long term, it's still going to be even more interesting. But I believe there's going to be a ton of opportunities like you've never, ever seen before, even imagine. Okay, there will be so much money made over these next 3 to 4 to 5 years. It'll be just crazy the amount of money that's made, but it's also going to be very tumultuous because you're going to see an entire class of people, especially in our nation. We have the poor, the middle class, and then the rich. Maybe then you could say the uber rich, and maybe you could say the uber poor, right? But in our country here, there's typically been 3 classes: poor, rich, and the middle class. And what we're going to see, and what I see, is that the middle class as we know it, and it's already been disappearing. Automation has helped with that a lot of mid-tier management, things like this. But and it's always been, the writing's always been on the table, and we've seen it over the years. And you go into a grocery store, and it used to be 8 tellers, and 20 years ago, now you see them with the self-checkouts, and you see one person, on the lines, and now you go in McDonald's, and there's like nobody on the line. I don't go to McDonald's anymore, but that's a separate thing. but anyway, but when you go into McDonald's and other places, you'll see there's nobody in there right now manning the booths. It's just tech behind them. You place your order, and we did go to McDonald's in Orlando, so it's not like I don't visit, but just for reasons. Side note, just saying. So what I'm saying is that the technology, we've seen that change over the years, and I'll say this, that now the tellers at the banks, the same thing, and you see glimpses of it, but now, oh my goodness. And you'd see like robots that would be doing simple things here or simple things there. You'd see these crazy videos of robots trying to do stuff and stuff flying all over the place. It didn't really work. But now when you look at people like Elon Musk that's releasing the robots, and they just told me they're dancing, and you got all these other companies that are doing these things on this end. Man, we're here, guys. Like it's no longer a thing of the future. When I was a kid, we used to watch the Jetsons and say, man, that would sure be cool if you could have a TV where you could talk to other people on. That's Zoom, guys. Like, you got to realize, a lot of the technology has existed for a very long time. It's just what has been made available to the public. Got to realize, Nikola Tesla look at his patents. If you ever have an opportunity, it's very fascinating. Go look at all of his inventions that he patented. This is public record. And look at the stuff that he produced, like way back at the beginning of the 20th century. Okay, so, you're talking about like hundreds of years ago, this guy produced this stuff. Some technology that we're seeing like here now that is like transformative technology, but this was produced a long time ago. And so like a lot of this stuff just was not per se made public, or I wouldn't say made public, but a lot of people, it wasn't made popular. It wasn't popularized. So I'm bringing up all of this to say that, when we look at, where we are now, right? Where we are now, this invention, when I look at, I got into AI, and I got into AI back in 2014. Okay, I started working with some guys. They used to have a tech place here where they do like coding camps and stuff. And it was very fascinating for me because I used to always, I started building robots when I was like 8 years old. So I didn't build the robots from scratch, but you could buy these kits, and I would buy these kits, and I actually ended up winning like a 4-H and ranking in a 4-H thing when I was younger for, building these different robots. I just thought technology was always fascinating. Not even from a business standpoint, but I just thought they were fascinating. And so, but when we fast forward to today, man, like
I started looking at AI like about 11 years ago, and I saw that I didn't really think that it was gonna be this quick, right? I mean, you gotta realize from 2014 till really like 2022, 23, there wasn't a lot of advancement to the public, or I wouldn't say there's not a lot of advancement. Google used to always, essentially, Google had really majority of all the AI scientists in the world really worked for Google, like the majority of them. And so there were transformations and things that they were setting up and putting in place. But as far as the masses and people even talking about it, even people being a thing, even think about it. You know, what was the biggest thing in technology even 5 years ago? It wasn't AI. The hot thing was the metaverse. Okay, think about it. You know, the metaverse was the thing, like the thing that people thought was going to be the next technology. And although people were still putting energy and emphasis on artificial intelligence, it still was not to the point to where people thought it was going to be this useful this fast. And then, you know, I started the first really like public use of AI that I saw where it was like the masses were using it in that way. Was a company by the name of Jarvis, okay? Jarvis AI, and it was like and I believe they were even using like the back end of chat, but at that point, but anyway, that was the first like real use case. I mean, they had like a multi-billion-dollar valuation, and then shortly thereafter, ChatGPT really was released to the public. And then everybody started using these chat bots, and it was like, oh my goodness, I can put this in and this happens. And then things just started to very quickly. You started seeing things that the adoption of ChatGPT. I don't think there's ever been a product in the history of modern day time that has been adopted, has got this many users this fast. I mean, ever, right? So you're talking about, and that's in and around what we're talking about here. And now you have everybody that, you know, that most people are using it. And that's another thing too, another opportunity that I see. Even businesses, most businesses don't even really know how to use it. They kind of know how to use it. They know how to ask it stuff and do things like that. But those are like the dumbest versions of it. You know, when I say the dumbest versions, I mean the lower level versions of what it does. Because most people don't even understand, you know, how to fully utilize it. And even understanding how to use it with certain APIs and things like this, getting into agents, which I'll talk about in a second. But this has already changed everything. I was reading I was reading something on LinkedIn, somebody on my LinkedIn page, and just had put this up, and and I'm trying to see if I took a picture of it. Yep, I think I did take a picture of it. It says the AI layoff has begun. Now, I don't know. I think a lot of this is just from natural attrition and people just, you know, changing things. I mean, you had companies all along, even like a Turner and things. Their workforce, their past workforce I believe, was a dated workforce, meaning that what Turner needed to survive in the future and what their executives did. That's why they had like tons and tons and tons of layoffs years ago, which was very wise of them, because what it would probably, for them, they said it's probably easier for us to hire new skill sets for where they wanted to go. Where they were, their current workforce was fine, but for where they were going, their current workforce could not take them there. And this is why when you look at different companies at different stages of their life cycle. When you look at a company like a startup, like, you know, for many years I existed as a small business, and then years later I decided to start a startup. And so you understand, like, you say, well, how are you in small business for many years, then you start a startup? Look, I'm speaking about the type of business. A small business really already knows how it's going to make money. How, you know, hey, I'm a plumber. I give plumbing services to this person. They pay me. Okay. And a startup doesn't really know how they're going to really do those pieces, who even their customers going to be, what is even the product that they're going to be offering, that where they can get to what's considered product market fit. And I do that with air quotes because it means several things to many people. But when you look at that, you say those are typically scalable entities that can, when you think about startups, you think of companies like Facebook or or Tesla, or even Home Depot, I would consider a startup, even the way that they end up developing and growing, just not a tech per se startup. But that's another thing. I believe every company now is a tech company, which I'll get on to a little bit later. But when we look at this, we have to say, okay, building a tech startup doesn't really know, like I said, how they're going to get there, and all these pieces on this end. So when we look at this, then we have to say, okay, how do they? Then from this point, you have to really kind of figure it out kind of as you go. And with that, you need a group of people at the early stages of a startup, okay, that are more fluid in nature, a group of people that are more generalists in nature, because you don't want to go specialize with a company and hire all these specialized people, and you don't even fully know what you're offering. So how can you hire specialized staff and you don't even fully understand not only what you're offering, but what the market is willing to pay you for, right? At scale, okay? So startups are developed to really scale faster, and scale over periods of time to end up, returning, the same basis as a small business or any other corporation would, but it's just in the time frame of what it can typically do. And most of the time, it can scale with much lower amounts of money. So and so, with that being said, you have these startups. You may have a workforce, even your current workforce, you may love them. And at the beginning, what it takes to get a company from where it's at to maybe what is considered product market fit, that takes a certain type of employee or person that works for the company. Somebody who can really be a little more fluid, who can really, figure things out, work things, make these things happen on this end. And then once you get more established, then that's when you start looking at more specialized skills. Hey, this person, all they do is X, all they do is Y. But then what happens to the staff that were built around this that had these generalized level of skills? What happens, the majority of them, when it's time for them to transfer into more specialized skill sets, some people can do that transition. Some people don't know how to adapt, right? They're so used to giving generalized solutions that now when it's time for them to do the specialized solutions, they don't know how to adapt. And the only way that you can do it, even though you love them, you have to find the specialized people, and then those people, for the next phase. So I'm bringing this up just to say doesn't necessarily sound like the best thing, but it is what it is. It's like, there's times and there's seasons to everything, and even the state of our country, the state of everything. I mean, there's times and seasons to everything, but the season that we're in right now with this AI, I've never seen anything develop this quickly, this fast, and double this quickly and this fast, and get better this fast, this quickly. So a month ago, what the technology, the AI technology could do, it couldn't do a month ago, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, 10 months ago, a year ago. And it's growing so fast, man. So, and I brought up this sheet here, and they were just saying that AI layoffs. And if we looked at this, the companies, Microsoft 6,000, Chegg 22%, Dell 12,000, HP 2,000, Salesforce 1,000, Microsoft 200 key people in certain areas, PwC 1,500, Meta 5%. Klarna 700 and the stuff. Now, I believe some of this has nothing to do with AI. I think that's just naturally attrition that happens and things that, companies are repurposing visions, like I said, and repurposing those skills on this end. But I do believe that we ain't seen nothing yet. And I do know that a lot of the stuff that we had skills for, even think about it. Think about this. See, what we have now is still not real AI, okay? It is, but it's not. And what I mean by that is that these things have not got to the point to where it's artificial general intelligence. And when it gets to that point, then now you essentially have the smartest doctor, the smartest lawyer, the smartest scientist, the smartest entrepreneur, all in one thing, okay, if is what I would say. And I wouldn't necessarily even call it a being. I just say a thing, okay? And that thing is now smarter than 1,000 people, okay? And so that's a little far off from now. But even with what we're seeing right now, guys, you got to realize that why does somebody, like a lot of the knowledge workers that we had that made money based on the knowledge that they have, if somebody at the strip of a button, at the touch of a button now has unlimited knowledge in their pocket, right, almost, to be able to scourge the internet or data and to look at all those things, then what happens to the knowledge workers, you know? What happens to the lawyers? What happens to the doctors? What happens, you know, I was just talking to somebody, the how many doctors and how many robots they have in emergency rooms doing surgery. A good friend of mine is a surgeon, you know, and looking at all these things, and I'm like, hey, these things are happening. Now, surgery for certain things, like I believe may take longer than others, or the need for it in certain areas, but I'm bringing this up to say that changes are happening. And so what I am saying to you is this, and this is why I wanted to bring this up. So I came and I got this for you here, guys, because I wanted to show you guys this. Okay, now, if we look at this, I talked about, let me pull it up for us here. Okay, now, the big things, the world will change in the next 6 to 7, I said 12 months. So the world is, and I would say 6 to 7 months, because it's already happening right now. The changes is already, it's kind of like, and I don't mean to be gory with this, but it's kind of like, if you ever watched one of those horror movies and the person gets half of their head like chopped off and they're like walking around, it's like they're walking, and they're still walking, but they're dead. They don't even know they're dead. This is kind of what's happened. And I'm bringing this up to say that, look, stuff is happening, guys, and we have to move fast, okay? We have to move fast because you have not seen it yet. When people start really, and companies really start understanding how to fully utilize this AI, and if it continues to get better, and in a way that it's getting better as fast as it's getting better, and all those things converge, man, a lot of things are not going to be necessary, but there'll be a whole lot of opportunity for other areas. And this is why I'm telling people to repurpose your skills, right? This is so important. Like, find what's most important right now and do that thing. Figure out what the market is asking for. Because there's a lot of stuff that the market is asking for right now. You know, even helping people to understand fully the skills. And a lot of people I see, they say, man, like a lot of y'all don't really know what's happening with AI. But even the little that you know about it is more than a 60-year-old retiree or a 65-year-old retiree knows about it, right? And the difference in the knowledge base is enough for them to pay you for that knowledge that you have. Okay, you understand what I'm saying? So I'm bringing that up to say there's lots of opportunities that will happen here, but you cannot look at the world as it was. That the world as we know it is no more, right? There's a new world that is emerging, a new world that is being created literally and almost created as we speak. So what you have to make sure of is that you are ready for this new world. You know, I have a book that I was finishing called A Brave New World. I started on that book like years ago, and I put it down, I stopped, and I have to, that's one thing, like I have so many books that I've not released, I've written for years, and that was the thing. And it's so crazy though, you know, now, you know, writing that, I was really kind of looking into the future and really kind of seeing things that I kind of saw and changes that I kind of saw. You know, I played it off of the book that I read when I was a kid in high school, A Brave New World. And, you know, and so I'm bringing all that up just to say that the things that are happening now, the things that if I was to write in that same book and release, oh my goodness, like it is a brave new world. And what we're seeing glimpses of it now. I think it's like we're at see, when a woman my wife and I, we have 7 kids, so I've seen the pregnancy there and what happens with a pregnancy, and I think I definitely don't understand it in the way she understands it, but I understand the some of the time periods maybe a little more than she does, because when I was able to, I guess when you're, a woman, when they're having a baby, they're experiencing it from one, but I remember like, okay, the last time when we had the baby, this is what happened so many days before or weeks before. And I remember those timelines like, this happens. And then you have like pre-contractions. Those aren't really contractions, but they're like kind of like pre-contractions. Contractions let you know that a baby is coming. Okay. The pre-contractions are kind of like fake contractions, but they precede the real contractions. Get what I'm saying? So where we are right now is in the middle of a pre-contraction, okay, before the real contractions happen. And when that new, and so what I'm saying is I'm trying to give it to you guys like the things are happening, and it's going to be birthed, and this new world as we know it is already here. But it's a beautiful thing, because I believe that you'll see the first solo preneurs, one-person billion dollar companies, okay, with the technology. I think you'll see, people as young as 6, 7, 8 years old producing $1 million companies, right? I think you'll see where, technology used and things used in ways we never imagined possible, and I think there'll also be things that, technology be used for the worse. And those are things that I will not mention in this. Maybe I'll do another thing where I'll speak about that. But this is not what this is about. This is about preparing you. And my number 2, I had 3 things that I wanted to finish this with. The first thing was the world will change in the next 12 months, really the next 6 to 7 months. The second thing that I said is like, you must take action now. You must take action now. You must take action now. The best time to do anything was probably yesterday or today, but the next best time is now, right? You got to know that, hey, listen, you can't wait, guys. A lot of you guys think you have more time than you do. You don't. If there was any other time that if you had an idea for a business, do it now, because that same business relevance will probably not be relevant in a year. Okay. If you had an idea to do a movie, do it now, because it's no telling even the technology, even think about it, animations, guys, the type of animations that are able to be produced. I hired a guy on my team, okay, who's a phenomenal animator, right? But a lot of the technology now is animating this stuff. And so, and so he's still, They and it's creative too. It's not as creative as us, but it's creative enough, and I say enough to meet the needs of what may need to be done out there. So I'm bringing that up to say that, man, the Bible says in Ecclesiastes 11, it says the farmer that waits, this is one of my favorite scriptures. It says the farmer that waits for the perfect time to plant will never harvest. Right? It's never a perfect time. The wind is never going to blow the right way. The stars are never going to align. It doesn't work that way. And so, business doesn't work that way. Life doesn't work that way. You got to take that shot. You got to take your chance, right? Like I said, like you waiting for that perfect time, that book drop. Hey, little shorty over there, man, you better pick up that book. Hey, how you doing? Here you go. You know what I'm saying? Like, you take your shot, because you don't know, there may not be another shot for you to take. And so, you may have another shot, and I'll take that back. I believe there'll always be shots to take, but I don't believe that the shots will be the same. And that's the same thing. I played running back, and I remembered as a running back, I would be there, and that hole would open up, and you had a couple seconds to get through that hole. And if you didn't get through it in that time, the hole was closed, and it was a busted play, okay? And it was just it. And so another play would come, but it would never be that play. Never that play again. Never those circumstances. Never the linebacker being exactly right here. Them being in that right zone and all these things. That play will never happen again. So this is what I'm saying. There will be future plays. but never more than what we've seen right now. And this is what I'm saying. So I'm just telling people if there was ever a time that you wanted to do something, do it now, because it's going to take, none of this stuff, nothing in business happens overnight. But I do believe with what's happening with the tech, you've seen companies that are less than a year or two old, two years old, with billion-dollar valuations and things like this. Because of what they're doing, they're able to grab market share much faster. These things are able to happen so much faster. The name of our company, Velocity Company, our parent company, see, Velocity is not just about speed; it's about speed in a given direction, right? And so that's the thing. You have to know when to speed up and when to slow down. You have to know when to go fast and when not to go fast. This is what you have to understand as an entrepreneur. But I believe that right now, once you want to take your time on what to go into business on, okay? I think that's where you need to get advice from someone. We have a free community, the Small Business Nation. You can go to thesbnation.com and create a free membership. And you can get some mentorship and some free, we have a bunch of free stuff, from free workshops to free media library to, technology that's free tools that you can use in your business. And it doesn't cost you anything. But you need to get with someone, okay? We have an incubator that we do where we help to identify the right businesses for people to go into, because I've seen people all the time say there's two different things in business. You need to have the capacity, okay, skills, okay, to do it, right? And you may have your physical skill may be one thing from a rate from 1 to 10, okay? You may be the best floor cleaner in the state. So that may put you at an 8 out of 10, okay? Now, that's one skill there, right? That's one metric. So you're the best technician-wise, but that's just technician. But that doesn't mean you'll be the best in business. You then have a skill set from 1 to 10 when it comes to entrepreneurship. You have number 1 when it comes to being just the absolute worst business person that there can be. And then you have number 10, which I consider billionaires, right? And so on that end, and so you're somewhere on that spectrum there, and so that's gonna dictate. So you have your technical skills times your entrepreneurial skills, then times, which is probably the most important piece, which is the multiplier, which is the level of opportunity that you pursue. So you got a 1 opportunity to 10 opportunity. Right now, a 10 opportunity is artificial intelligence. A 1 opportunity might be a newspaper that's losing like 24 to 30 to 40% market share year over year, right? Probably the worst business to go into is the newspaper. And the best business to go into is, so you could take somebody with great entrepreneurial skills and put them in a number 1 opportunity and they would still lose. And so you have to make sure that you find the right opportunity to go in. I love Warren Buffett's quote. He said, it's not so much did you learn how to row the boat fast. Sometimes it depends on what kind of boat you're in, right? I don't care how great of a driver you are. If you're in a little Toyota Prius, nothing to get a Prius, but you're not going to be able to beat me if I'm in a Lamborghini, right? You're just not. I don't care how good you can drive, right? And so, but I'm bringing that up to you just to say that you need to make sure you're in the right opportunity. So get with somebody to make sure that you're in the right business in the first place. But once you figure that out, then you need to run as fast as you can to understanding what works and to be able to duplicate it, to be able to get it to where you can produce as much money as you can, okay, in a shorter period of time. And at least that you've established some things over that period of time. And there's going to be a time during this time where I definitely believe that people are going to be purchasing a lot of businesses. So you have a business in the marketplace, people are going to have cash and they're going to be looking to buy. Maybe not for the prices that people were once able to sell them for. But once again, so if you do have a business, I would tell you sell it now, because probably a year from now, definitely 6 months from now, your valuation is probably maybe cut in half, maybe a fourth, okay? Because of the relevance of what it was and the relevance of what it is and the relevance of what it will be will diminish just based on the quantified level of technology and how fast it's moving. It can make businesses that once relevant, that once had value, no longer have value. And so, so with that being said, guys, you need to move now. So if you need help, let us know. We can help you. Of course, we may not be able to help you on a one-on-one basis. Our model's not even set up in that way. But we have an ecosystem that we plug people in. I believe that small businesses are going to be the key to really a lot of the stability of communities, neighborhoods, things of that nature. And I think we have to get even closer, and small businesses have to start doing more business with one another, so that when the markets change, even if you had 1,000 small businesses each making it a point to do business with one another, they can still succeed in that way. And so these are things that are going to be crucially important. I will say this too, it is very interesting, and I was kind of thinking about even in our communities, our local communities, the interesting thing, I'm gonna tell you this, and this is, a lot of churches, synagogues, places of worship for all various religions. What you've seen in the pandemic, this is something that's also extremely interesting. I read an article, and not to go into a ton of detail, but what you see is a lot of those are closing down. And so typically, and you say, well, why does that matter to me, JR? Well, it matters from an economic standpoint. You say, how? Well, on average, each one of those churches or places of worship, they ended up producing about 1.7 million, about $2 million worth of economic impact per church, per place of worship. So what you're seeing is, and those things were kind of like a lot of the glue that kind of really held certain communities together, the outreach things, why it made people focus and want to be in communities. So see, a lot of that's changing, guys. There's so many things that are changing. I may just talk about that, just something separate at a later time, but I'm bringing all these things to you so that you understand and know that you have to take action. You can't wait. Don't wait, because if you wait, you're going to be calling me back, JR, I need some help, and it'll be too late. The third thing that, and I said this, I'm just reading some of my notes. I put, if you ever wanted to start a business, start it now, right now. If you ever wanted to secure funding, this is another thing. If you funding the lending markets, man, like I'm telling you, like I woke up one day, we were helping people raise millions of dollars. If you need funding help, we have people that we can send you to and help you. But you can look, there's a lot of lending people that are out there that can help you. But I'm telling you right now, the market and how they're lending right now is so much easier than it will be. Now, I'm saying this too, though. A lot has even changed over the past 2 months. Okay, 2 months. The SBA's lending qualifications and criterion have gotten even more strict. Certain things that we're looking at here just over the last 2 months, guys. What I'm saying is, listen, so I'm saying if you were ever going to do this, the time that you needed to secure funding, I tell people, if you got equity in your house, get a HELOC, get a home equity line of credit, a cash out refinance, get access to your cash now so you can have it when things change. In addition, what else did I put here? If you wanted to, buy a house or buy a rental, hey, do it now, because in the future, that's probably not going to be available in the same way. And the last thing that I wanted to say here is that I just have never seen anything like this. AI is changing everything. And my 23 years in business, so July 25th, we'll have celebrated 23 years in business. And I'm going to tell you, I've learned a lot, but I've never seen anything like this. And that's why I had to do this, to explain this to you, to let you know that, hey guys, you gotta do something, because if this goes the way that I feel like it's gonna go, man, I mean, it's gonna be interesting. And so, but also there's gonna be a ton of opportunities. So stay connected with us, guys. I got a lot of stuff. I'll probably talk about, I want to talk about food supply. Oh man, you know, we have a company called Harvest Gardens, and you know, I do believe that, you know, as a country, we still need to understand really how to produce food. You know, I mean, it's just so many different things, guys. I mean, that I want to talk to you about. I don't want to make this a 5-hour video, but, you know, I just wanted to explain these things to you and let you know the relevance of what this is. So I'm just going to tell you, and I'm trying to get up and tell you here, like, listen, guys, do not wait. I mean, because if you wait, it may be too late. So stay in touch with us. You could contact us down here if you're looking at this from YouTube. You know, subscribe to our page. You know, we'll have some other things that we could kind of keep you in the loop. You know, my job and my mission is to provide information to you that's practical, that's down to earth, and things that I believe are extremely relevant for the times. So a lot of my content that I produce is in and around business, finance, money, but I do a lot of other things too. And so we cool. You see on our page here, we do a lot of things in and around entertainment. You know, so we're like like an educational entertainment company. I try to educate people, but we try to do it fun, exciting, and do something that's going to keep you engaged. And hopefully, this was able to keep you engaged. And we appreciate you. We love you. Take care until the next time. I'm J.R. McNair. Bye bye.
Perfect.